And when you get all sorts of emails like that about positive COVID cases and things, it just gets you a little distracted. So appreciate your help this morning. Instead of animosity, I would love help. So our project this morning, we're going to be working on our menu bars and trying to access a file. So let's call this L13 menu. Yes.
So is it net 4, 6.1 or 5? That's one because that's the options I have for mine.
Let's take a look. How do you get to what version of .NET you're using? Some of you have had to do it and some of you haven't. Does anybody remember? Use your project menu. Ashley's back there going, yes, I remember. Use your project menu and go down to properties on your project. And then we're looking at this application item. It should be the one that opens up when we look at the project properties. And right now I'm using .NET Framework 4.7.2. It's hard for me to imagine the .NET Framework, a lower one, causing us problems because menus have always existed with Windows Forms. But I could see like a newer one, maybe one that's too new, could cause us problems. You know, maybe there's some sort of difference in the way they're supporting it if it's too new. But that's what I've got. How's everybody else? You guys got about the same or lots of varieties around here? Never know what they've got on the computers. Well, so we could actually just change the properties on our form. Let's just change our text property. And we'll change it from form 1 to something like menu testing. And instead of changing any back color or font or any other properties, let's just go find that menu strip and let's just put it on our form and see if everybody can see it okay. Now, things that would make you not be able to see this that are under your control would be if you have some sort of interesting display properties set, like a reverse video type display property, that for sure could impact whether you could see this or not. If you're in dark mode on Visual Studio and you can't see it, you should probably switch to light mode. You know, just things like that where we can change our display. Okay, so how are you guys looking that have been having trouble? Nothing.
So it's got to be when we build the project, it's got to be like, I don't know. It's got to be something we build the project because it's been like a lot of hours on it, like looking it up and on the help, and they didn't do it. So it's got to be something.
And you're logged on. Are you logged on to Visual Studio? Should you close?
It works now. It works correct on dark mode. It works great. So it's got to be something on like building the project or.
So you can see it right now. You can see the menu.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And what about you, Logan? Can you see it? Are you getting onto the computer, the desktop computer, so that you can see if that will work? So something about your computer.
When you build it.
Okay. And like I said, reverse video. Some people like using those kind of display settings where you have a reverse video, and that can cause a lot of problems of things not displaying properly, especially when you're in a development environment using tools like that. And if you have, I know Logan has glasses, a lot of people that have astigmatism will change their video settings like that because it's more comfortable for their eyes, and it can cause some weird problems. We don't usually see any problems like that. And, you know, they've fixed a lot of them over the years, but every once in a while we still run into things. Remember, as a developer, you have lots of support people. You can call tech support. You can look at Google. You can search other web browsers. And then in the bottom, in the end, it's up to you. And that's, unfortunately, the hardest part of our job, right, is that in the end, it's up to us. So we always have to be trying things that we can try like that, like video settings, trying another computer to see if it's a thing that's just specific to this computer or is it specific to me, trying to not be logged on. Anything like that we can do to troubleshoot any issues that we have are going to be helpful. Because boy, there's nothing worse than needing to get something to work and not being able to because of a technical difficulty. And it does happen to us. Just remember, all you can do is stay calm and keep trying to figure it out. And you guys do a great job at that. So we've got some that are working. I'm kind of talking here, waiting for Logan to get on that desktop to see if it works for him.
I found one difference between the two projects.
What'd you find?
So like the target framework on mine, like was just like a .NET Core. It was like on the .NET framework.
.NET Core.
But whenever I was looking for other like forms on Visual Studio, like browsing, I didn't see anything else for like C#. So maybe after like install, I don't know. But that's the difference.
So it is your .NET version?
Some of it is like Visual.
Okay.
So mine's defaulting to Core, so his is defaulting to Core, not framework. He's not.
Oh, can you check that, Logan, on your laptop?
Whenever I did the project, just went to Core. I don't know how to change it. But that's how you change it. That's how it works.
We should be able to, I think we should be able to change that in our tools. Let's look. Tools, options, because this is where most of our environment settings are. I'm going to roll up this environment one and look at all of our categories. And I kind of think that would be something that would be in our projects and solutions. But I'm just sort of looking around. Oh, here's ASP.NET Core. That doesn't really help me very much. I don't see a thing, and I'm sure it's in here somewhere. We know we can go to our project properties and change it, but I'm sure it's in one of our options somewhere. We just have so many options that, again, we have to start doing this whole big search to figure out, what options we could even change. So it seems like it should just be in our general project stuff. Maybe it is environment.
You can change like the target framework if you go into your project options, but on the project that I had, it just didn't show it. So I was trying to like install it and start installing this one.
So it just was
maybe you
being.
can just install it at home, like 4.7.2, and then it will show up on like which one. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know. Remember, we did the tools, get tools and features, and there were a couple of people whose computers didn't have the templates installed for Windows Forms. So we had to go to that individual component. And install something. You remember better than I do.
Well, that way, if you just go home, you can just look how to like install any target like network.
The whole .NET.
You can just get it.
Well, they keep adding more features for us. So if you're having that problem, go to your project properties and change that .NET version and see if that'll take care of it. If not, let me know and we'll do research together offline. So let's create our menu. First of all, this menu was our file menu. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to put ampersand file. Remember, the ampersand goes right before the letter that we want to have the underscore in our menu be our shortcut item. And in our file menu, we're going to have open, and we want the P or the O to be our shortcut letter. And let's say we're going to also have save. And that is the S, right? Sometimes I have to look at our menus. Save is S. And then save all is L, the little lowercase l. So A ampersand LL. Okay, and then I want my little bar. So I'm going to right click. Where am I? On this type here, new one, and insert a separator. And then I want exit. Now my last menu item for exit, the X is going to be the shortcut key. So right now what we're mostly concerned about is our menus, and that's okay because that's what we're doing with this little application. We don't have much going on yet. We're going to be adding some open and save type things. But right now, I'd like to implement our exit. So let's double click on it. While we have our menu open, we can just double click on a menu item, and that will take us into an event procedure for that menu item. So here we are with our exit menu. We just want to do application dot, what did we say? It was close or exit? There it is. And that'll take us out of our application. So yeah, we just double clicked on that menu item. Now, when you look at your form and you look at the menu, each of these items, like right now I have the exit menu selected. So if you look at your properties window, you'll see you're looking at the properties for that specific exit menu item. So we could change these properties for our different menu items if we wanted to. We don't usually need to. The names are kind of long, but they're real illustrative of what we have going on and what we're working with and everything. So you might see a prefix of MNU if somebody changes the names. So that's okay. They can do that if they want to. All right. The next menu that we have is going across. We're going to create an edit menu. And our shortcut will be the E. And in our edit menu, we're not going to really have a lot. We're just going to let people change the font because we want to look at that font common dialog and see how it works. So that's all on our edit menu. And then finally, we'll have a help menu. Again, I'm going to press Alt, and it is the H key. That's the shortcut key for that menu. So I'll make my help menu amper HELP. And in our help, the only thing we want is that about. Again, Alt, H, and about is always the A in help. So about. Perfect. So we're going to slowly build all these menus, and that's why I want this application to be real small, real simple, because we already have a bunch of different events, right? Each of these menu items is going to create a different event for us if we create that code to do something. So we can end up with a pretty busy application right away. Let's test our file exit. I'm going to run this thing. And make sure it works. There's our little bar there between those different categories. We should be able to exit. And then we can run again if you want to. And this time, let's use your Alt key. And on your Alt key, then you should be able to press F and X to simulate that working. Woohoo! Yay! So yay, we can exit out of our application. Let's do our help about thing next. So we'll jump all the way over to the end. For our help about, we saw that in Visual Studio, it's kind of an involved window, and it shows us all of the different packages and products. And if we click on them, we see what version we're running of them. Up at the front, though, the top, we see our Visual Studio information, and that's what we want. So we're going to need to create a new form. So our about window, our help about window, It's just going to be a little form that pops up that tells people about our application. So let's go to Solution Explorer and let's add a new form. So far, we've only used our single form, so we haven't worried about its name or anything like that. But in our project, let's right-click on our project and choose Add. We can actually go to the option that says Form, Windows Forms, because that's what we want. If we didn't see that option in our menu, we could choose New Item, and then we would look through the template list to find the Windows form. But we see it there in our list. So let's give it a name. The default name is Form 2, but we want this to be our About window. So let's name it Form About. And I'm going to add that. Now, if we wanted to rename our other form, Form 1, we could, but it's just like renaming a class. We need to use Solution Explorer and rename it and make sure all of the components got renamed. It can be pretty messy. So we'll leave our original form, Form 1, and this one will be Form About. Now, you can make this look however you like. We could add like a logo image here for our company, all sorts of things, whatever we wanted. I'll just put, let's see, a label, and I'll start it kind of here in the middle. And in my text property for my label, I'm going to click this drop-down arrow so that it opens up that multi-line label editor. And I'll put some information like, this is our application menu app. We'll put our date. And we'll say that this is version 1.0. Created by your company name there or your personal organization. And I think that I'm going to add this thing to click somewhere. It's not. There. It should close if you click someplace else. And I want my font to be a little bigger because it looks kind of lame up there in the corner being so small. I'm going to make it a lot bigger. .36 is too big. All right. And you can change it however you want. In our text property, if you go back to the drop down where you can see all of the information, I think we should be able to add like a \T for tab. Let me try it. It just shows the \T. It's not that smart. So we would have to space it out however we want it. And of course, we could make it multiple different text boxes and images, and you could make it look as nice as you wanted to. Mine doesn't look that good, but I'm okay with it. So let's display this form. We need to go back to Design on our Form 1 form. And I want this to happen when somebody clicks Help About. So I'm going to double click my Help About and bring up my event. Now in our event, we want to create a new instance of our Form About. So let's call it Form About with a lowercase f. And it's a new instance of that form. We've designed that form. We've given it kind of like its template. So we're going to create a new instance of it. Now we want to show it. And as we look at our form, we have, again, a lot of properties and events that we can use. So I want to kind of see what kind of events there are. I can show my form, and I can show it as a dialog. I'm going to choose this show dialog, and when we run it, we'll see why. Let's go ahead and do some sort of message box here, just because I want to put some unusual code in our window menu event procedure. The menu has run. So what we're trying to figure out here is when we show that form, is this form still running in the background, or is it sitting and waiting for us to do something with that other form, with our show form? In our form about, do you want an OK button, or do you want to just close it with the big red X? Big red X? We can do that. Okay, let's run this thing. So here's my form. I'm going to choose my help about, and my little form window shows up. There's my about stuff. I could close that, and now I got my message box. Does everybody's work? Did it work that same way? Let's go into our code and change that. So I want to look at my Form 1 code. And instead of using show dialog, let's use show, so we can see the difference. If we can see any difference. Let's try it. So now we're just doing the show option. I'm going to choose help, about. And do you see it? You've got both things happened at once. They're both on my other screen. You couldn't see them. But the message box displayed and the form displayed. So when we just use a show, both forms are still active. Their code is still running. We could do things in the background on that background form. When we use the show dialog, that means our background form, the parent per se, waits, just pauses there until our child form closes or gets done. So questions about that? Does that make sense? When we're looking at our form, let's go back and change that to the show dialog. That gives us a better, kind of more the way we're used to seeing things. Now we could look at our properties for that child form and find some things, like we could make it open so that it was more centered in that previous form. Lots of different things that we could try. So be sure to experiment with some of those things to see how you can make the multiple forms work together. For this application though, since we kind of have to hurry a little bit, we want to go back to our main form, Form 1. I'd like to have some information on this form, so I'm going to add a label. And for our label, let's just put a text box like album name. Now remember, because I didn't set any of my properties at my form level, like my font size and my back color and things, everything's going to the default. So my form is very small. I have an 8-point font or 8.25 working here. So when we use that form to set all those defaults, we make our lives a lot easier. But I'll go ahead and change the font size on this label. And I don't know, I want it to be like 18 so that we can see it, because we're going to change our font on it. And then I want a text box here. Let's name our text box text box album. And let's increase its font size. Now in our form, I would just like something to show up in our text box. So let's just put something in our text property, any sort of album name. The album name. So our application here is going to be a little bit smaller as we get started, but then we'll figure out how to add some great things. So the thing that I'd like to do now is look at working with the font. Whenever we are working on Windows, even when we're working with our form designer tools, we know that we can bring up, so all working?
I didn't have the right workload installed, so I went and installed that.
Awesome, and that's taking care of it. So can you see the one that you couldn't see before?
Yes.
Oh, you can, good, great, great, great. Okay, so when we're working on our Windows form, even with our form designer tools, we can bring up this font dialog box. So this font dialog box exists throughout Windows, and a lot of Windows applications use it. Users are used to it. That's why Windows has been so successful, because it's very consistent with the look and feel, and people know how to use it. So we want to plug into that. We've already got our menus and things looking a lot like Windows, well, most of it. So let's use this font dialog box. We can actually display the same one that all the other Windows utilities use. Let's go find it. In your tools, you should see font dialog. I'm going to go up to the top of my tools and collapse down this all Windows form category, because I want you to see what category or grouping this control would be considered in. Our common controls are the things that we've been using so far, like buttons and checkboxes and labels. So those common controls are the common ones. Now containers are going to be like our group box. A panel is kind of like a group box where we could put a bunch of things on it and show it and hide it. In our menus and toolbars category, we of course have our menu strip, and we'll be looking at our tool strip eventually. But I want the font dialog, so it's under our dialogs category. Here it is, the font dialog. So they call these dialogs because they're pop-up windows that don't allow any resizing or anything. They're a dialog type window, and they keep control of the system until the user answers the questions or satisfies the requirements of the dialog. So let's drag that onto our form. When you drag it onto your form, just like the menu strip, you're only going to see it down here in your component tray. Okay, so we have our menu strip in our component tray. Now we have the font dialog in our component tray also. So let's see if we can use it. Max, if you just create a project, we put a label in a text box, and we have an edit menu that says font, and that's what we're getting ready to build. So get caught up with us in no time. Okay, so we got our font dialog, this common control added to our form, and we want to put code in. So let's double click on the font option in our menu. So this dialog box that we created, the font dialog, was given a name, font dialog 1. So I'm going to use that name. That's the name of the instance of the font dialog that we have in our application. And again, we saw that show is something that we use a lot. So we can show that dialog just like we could a Windows form. So let's try it. We're just going to show it. We're not going to do anything with it yet. We're just going to make it display. So let's run. We can choose edit, font, and now we should see that common control. We can mess with things, but it won't matter because we haven't done anything yet in our code to be concerned with what the user clicks. So let's cancel. Now, for this one, I don't have any really good sample code. So let's see what we can find on Google. C# font dialog. What do you guys like? We've got C# corner, Microsoft documentation. There's so many new sites, and it's like every time you search for something, there's new sites that are training people about C#. That's good. That means that there's a lot of jobs out there. But let's look at this Microsoft one. Sometimes the Microsoft documentation leaves a little to be desired, but it is our ultimate source. So that's where we should go. So in this example, take a look at it. They're setting some properties of the font dialog before it displays. So whatever their text box's font is right now is what they're going to set the default font to in that font dialog box. And then whatever colors are picked, that's what they're going to set in the font dialog box. That makes sense, right? Because we want it to be starting out with the font that's currently in use. Then they show the font dialog. Now, the show dialog is embedded within an if statement. And in the if statement, they say, if the dialog result is not equal cancel, so that means somebody clicked OK, right? Because they didn't click cancel, then we want to use their settings from the font dialog to update our stuff. So I'm going to basically convert this exact code to what we need in our application. So let's do that. I'm going to close here. And in our menu, we want to start out just like they did by setting some options. The one that they set is show color. So if we ran ours again, we would see that it wasn't showing the option for the font color because this property was not set to true. Well, we want to be able to set our color. Let's set that property to true. Next, in the font dialog, we want to set the font that it's currently displaying to be equal to the font of our text box. Text box album dot font. Next, we want our font dialog to use the color of our text box album, our 4 color. And we didn't set that. Ours is just set to the default. So that's okay. We can try messing with it. So now that's going to set up some of the font dialog properties for before it displays. Let's put a comment in like that. Set font dialog properties before the dialog is displayed. Now we're ready to display the dialog, display the font dialog, and make sure they do not press cancel. So we want to put this within an if statement. We're going to show our font dialog, get rid of our semicolon, and in our font dialog, when that gets done, it's going to return a result of a Boolean, just like our try parse. So if that result is not equal to the dialog result of cancel, and you can find all of these options in IntelliSense so that we don't have to do all of the typing. As long as they don't click cancel, we want to use the settings from the font dialog. So let's update our text box font to be equal to our font dialog font. Let's update our text box album for color to be equal to our font dialog color. So when we're working with these system dialogs, we just have certain properties that they care about, and we just set them or check them to see what the user did to them, and we can use them in our code. So you should be able to try it. I'll start up and open my font dialog. I did set my font to 14 size, so I know it's using my font. I'm going to pick something that's really noticeably different. Maybe not a wingding, but I'll do a script of some sort. Make it bold and bigger. Now I should be able to change my color too. So let's see, I'll make it, I want to be able to tell, so I'll do maroon. And when I click OK, then we should see that font applied to our text box. Could we do the same thing and make it apply to our label also? Sure, we would just say whatever our label name is, .font. Everybody's work okay? Did update your font? Now, if you do edit font again, it should start out with how we have it set. We can change it some more. I'll change it back to black. Do a different something. But this time, if I cancel, we should see that it ignores our updates because we canceled out of that font dialog. So we don't want those changes to apply. Now, does that make sense for you? Everybody working okay with those common dialogs? Good, good, good. In our form then, we've got our menu all built, except for our file stuff. So let's choose File Open, and we'll try using the common dialog for the file open, and we'll get to the point where we can see our file name, and then we'll implement that to actually open our file and display it on our form. But right now, I just want to try the file open and let us see the Windows File Open dialog. Now, I still have the dialog tools open here in my toolbox, and I see that I have the Open File dialog. That's the one I want to try. So let's drag that on our form. Again, it's going to end up in your component tray. If you click on it in your component tray, you can look at the properties. You know, the file name that we're concerned with is what our big deal is. What's the file name? Because, you know, we'll let somebody click all around into all their different folders and stuff, but we need to know what they end up selecting as the file name so that we can open that file or whatever we want to do with that file. Now, some of the other properties that we have available with the File Open dialog box are things that we see when we're using it. We can actually use the multi-select. Right now that's set to false where they can only select one file. And usually with our Windows apps, that's the case. But if there were an option where we were going to let them choose multiple images or something, we could turn on this multi-select. We could check the read-only checkbox. We could set some things up as far as the initial directory where we want this user to be. So lots of different properties that we could set. We can set the title on our file open. Let's leave that all blank for right now. And let's just go into File and double click our Open to add an event procedure so that we can put in some code. The same way that we opened our font menu, let's open our File Open menu. Oh, it starts with Open, not File. So there it is, Open File Dialog 1. And we want to do the Show Dialog, just like we did with our font dialog. And let's just take a look at that thing. So let's run our application. And we'll do File, Open. Now this common control is like a really big deal for Windows, because whenever Windows first came out, the fact that it had this consistent file open was really important, because every single app had their own way of showing the file system and it was all different. And Windows came up and said, we're going to allow every developer to use our file open code. They don't have to recreate it. They can just use ours. And that was a really big deal. And that's why a lot of Windows applications are really consistent in their interface. Now, just like any other Windows application, we could navigate through our file system, open drives, open folders, find an actual text file that we wanted. And then once we found the file we wanted, we could click Open. Right now, the file name is set to Open File Dialog 1. That's not a very good setting. So there's definitely some things that we can try. Yeah, how cool is that? That Windows takes care of a lot of things for us that we don't even have to worry about. I try to open some file that's not there. It's not going to go back to my code and cause me to have troubles. Windows is going to take care of it and say that's not a good file name. Okay, so let's add some properties. We saw when we did our font dialog that it was good to set up some of the properties of this common dialog control before it displays. So let's check our file name. Let's say we're going to come up with some file name for our application, like audio XT. And then it would be nice if we could say that there was only certain extensions showing or something like that. I think there's a show option. Let's see. Let's look at the documentation online and see what they recommend. I know we want our file name to be set, but I think there's some others. Now I'm sitting here, oops, in .NET 5. Is that okay? I want .NET Framework here in my search. And then I want to search for Open File Dialog. And that should change my docs from what I was looking at before with that font dialog to the Open File Dialog. Now try to find this if you can online in Google. If you were starting out with a fresh Google search, just search C# Open File Dialog, and it should come up with this Microsoft Docs article as a result. There's what I was doing wrong. I was putting the file name and the extension in that file name property. And we really have two different properties when we're working with a Windows file. The file name is just the part before the dot, and then the extension is the dot and the little 3-letter file indicator type afterwards. And then here they've set up a filter. In this filter, they're saying we only want to see files that are type.txt, so that as our user navigates through the file system, they won't see every single file, that it'll automatically filter and only show the ones that are .text. Now, in this example, notice that they didn't embed the show dialog statement within an if statement. Instead, they set up a Boolean to hold the result. And after the show dialog is complete, they check to see the result, to see if the user clicked OK, our result is true, and then they use the data from that dialog. Okay, so let's set our defaults like they did. Instead of file name being audio.txt, we want it to just be .audio. And then we want the file or default extension to be equal to our .txt. In our open file dialog, we want our filter to show text files. So first, it's going to display these words, text documents, and then we're going to display within parentheses .txt, and then we're going to use the pipe symbol, which is our shift backslash above enter, and star.txt. So when you look at this, when you look at this on the file open screen, you'll see what this produced and where that comes from. Let's run it so that you can see that, because right here it looks kind of cryptic. If we do our file open, now our file name is set to audio like we want, and over here in our type, it says what we set that filter to. So here's our actual filter. We had the words text document, and then within parentheses, we put .txt. We had the pipe to be or, so the system took that out and interpreted that to mean that we wanted anything that was .txt or star.txt, because star is just a wild card, so that's just the same thing. Now, if you go look into a folder that has any text documents, I don't know if I have many, there's a few. You should only be seeing your text documents because it should be filtering properly. So good? Everybody's got it?
It's only showing the one extension. It's not doing the second part.
Oh, let's see it.
Doesn't look quite like yours. One second. Share.
If you can show us. We'll fix it. I think that's space. So before your, we don't want a space. So before your pipe character and after, no space.
No space. Okay.
See if that matters. It's sort of magic how it just pulls that for us.
I was just looking. Yeah, it doesn't say the second.
Huh. Let's see it again, because it looks right.
Yeah, I was actually in sandbox. So yeah.
Good job.
I edited them after the fact. I was just trying something, but it's same result.
Same result.
Yeah. Everyone else is showing the double extension? You're showing? Yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I can see everything matches up. You're showing? Oh, yours is showing the second. Seems like some people's are, some people's aren't.
Let's see, I don't see anything different.
All right.
Put a space after the word documents. We'll make it exactly the same, even though those things shouldn't matter.
Now, what exactly is what is the star TXT?
Well, if you're working with the Windows file system and you do a search, I could search for star.txt. So that's a wildcard in Windows. It's not just Visual Studio. It's the Windows file system that the star is a wildcard that means matches any character. So Windows kind of defaulted anymore to doing kind of the same thing, whether you have it or whether you don't. So in their search over the years, they've been, well, a lot of people don't put that star, and that's what they really mean, is everything that's .txt. So it gives you the same result. But in an older version of Windows, you would have to have the star.txt. And you'll see in SQL and in other kind of languages, we use that star as a wildcard to mean matches any character. So anything that's .txt is what we're saying there. So I don't know why. I don't really see any differences in yours. One thing that we could do, since you're just changing this value of this string, go ahead and take back over for us, if you would, Justin, because I want to try something. Since Justin is just changing that string, there is a chance that Visual Studio isn't marking that as requiring a build, so it's not really changing what he's running. So let's go up to the build menu, and let's see if we can force it. And let's do rebuild solution. And it says it succeeded. So now let's run it and see if anything's different. Probably not. Nope. I was hoping that maybe that would be why it wasn't matching. Does anybody see anything different? I sure don't.
What was the main issue again?
Star TXT
Yeah.
showing up on the right side of the file explorer. Could you show yours?
Uh-huh. I don't see anything different.
Where did the blue squiggly line say?
Do I?
Where did the blue squiggly line say?
On mine too, it's in represent text as a sequence of UTF-16 code to grounds not .NET framework source code for this kind of C reference source.
And we're sure we have the same .NET version running, right?
Yeah, I got the exact one.
Mm.
4.7.2.
So it just violates one of those rules where we always say the same thing's going to happen if you do the same thing. Well, something is obviously a little bit different. We will find it. So let's just keep that in mind. I'm going to take back over. It's like our earlier problem. We'll just keep struggling, trying to figure it out, being all frustrated, making our money.
Yeah, for
Be
now.
worth it.
Yeah.
Worth our pay. Okay, so now we are going to set up a Boolean like they did to hold our result of our show dialog, because well, they've got this weird special keyword, nullable. Well, Doesn't care, still mad at me, not gonna let me do that like they show in the examples. So instead, let's put it in our if statement like we did with our font dialog. If our open, oh, sorry, let me do this properly. If our open file dialog result is not equal to the dialog result of cancel, then we want to use the settings that the user selected. So let's just do a message box dot show, and we're going to display our open file dialog 1 dot file name, and make sure that it's actually the file name that we picked. So we're just going to slowly step through testing this thing and ignore the parts where it doesn't work the way we want it to. Let's run. There we go. Okay, I'm going to choose File Open. And in my File Open, let's see, I think I went into my 150 folders where I found some text files. So I'm going to choose this text file that I happen to have in my folder and choose to open it. And I should get a message box that shows me. Now this text file, if you click up here in the breadcrumb area where it's showing you your path, if you click up there, notice it changes. It lets you select your complete path with the backslashes and the drive letters and things like that. So what I should see in my message box, if I'm going to be able to find this file correctly, I should see C:\users\Riley RE /OneDrive Ozark Technical Community College /documents /CIS150 /weather appid.txt. I should see that whole path name so I could find that file. So let's choose open, and there it is. So it's got my whole complete path name, and finally that file name that I selected at the end. So now I've got this good file name I can use to open this file in my program and do whatever I want with it, process it however I want. Did that work for everybody?
I fell behind on the code. I gotta see what you have.
Oh, okay, let me open it back up for you. Make sure you've got that.
Are we doing the group presentation things for a form app, or is that not like the same type of?
Not really, but we can. Let's see. I always forget that. Yeah, we pretty much are just doing that for our unit exams. But we could show them if you wanted to, because we're done with those. Did you get it?
Yes.
Got it?
Yeah.
I'd love to see everybody's survey form. That sounds really good to me. Let's, actually, I think that would be a great time for us to look at people's surveys forms. Now, those were due the other night, and this week you're working on your hot cold game. So I hope you're having good results with that. Having fun with it too. You could add in some other features, I guess, if you wanted to. But yeah, I want to see some survey forms. Everybody got this working to this spot?
Yes.
Got all our menu stuff going here. Now, before I can show you survey forms, though, before we can look at those, we got one more thing we got to do, and it's a biggie. Go back to your form. We're missing something. Right now, we have a great menu bar, but we don't have a toolbar. And Windows apps have to have a toolbar. So let's add one. Yes, sir?
Go back to that open file code.
Sure. So do you see the toolbar control in your form tools?
The open file, not the, I got that,
Oh, you got that one.
I got that one.
Okay, here you go. How about that one? That's the one you want.
Right, good.
Got it? Okay. Yay! All right, go back to your form now. Good job. Now, what we want to do is find a toolbar. So we could look at all Windows forms, but we know that menu and toolbars probably has a toolbar since it says menu and toolbar. And it does, but they named it something weird. They called it a tool strip. A tool strip. So let's put that tool strip on our form. And by default, it's going to just drop it right below our menu bar. Now our tool strip is also in this component tray, just like these other common controls we have. And if you look at your tool strip, again, it has a name and it has some different properties that we can set for it. But the most important thing about it is that it has a collection. It has a collection of items, of tools that go across the screen here. And right now, it only has one, and it's not really a tool yet. It's just a placeholder for us, kind of like with the menu. So let's make this into our file open. Okay, so I'm going to click this drop down, and I do want this to be a button. File open is usually a button. Now it created that little button for us, and the placeholder thingy moved over. So if we wanted to add another one, we could. But I want to work on this button that we just added. So make sure it's selected. It has sort of the default mountain image for Windows. So let's look at that tool strip button. First thing is I want to change its name. When we were working on our menus, the system gave our menu items really good names, and we didn't really have to change anything, but this doesn't. We need to change that one to open, so we know that that's our open tool strip item. Otherwise, just like our text boxes, it's going to get all messed up. Now, the display style is set to image. That's normal for a toolbar. We're usually looking at images, but we can change it if we wanted to. The important thing for us then is which image is being displayed. I'm going to click on that and click the ellipsis to change from this default mountain picture. And instead, I'm going to import a picture into the project resource file. Let's import. Now, here's where things get interesting. What do we want to import from? Well, I told you this was going to be a good time for us to look at everybody's survey form. That's because we could download some images from Windows. Let's say we're searching for C# default images. I'm not sure. Oh, there it is. Good. Images and icons for Visual Studio. I think that's what we want, but it's kind of old. Let's look at that and see if it has a link somewhere in that site to the newer images. Oh, it's on 2019, so we're okay. Now, they say before you create your own artwork, consider making use of the 1,000 plus images in the Visual Studio image library. Let's do that. I'm going to click on Visual Studio Image Library. And here we have some different selections we can make. This tells us, for this image library, we're looking at these versions of Visual Studio that would all use this image library. There are different files that we will get downloaded. First of all, the image library is a zip file itself. The EULAs, what's a EULA? And user license agreement, right? So that's our agreement into how we will use the images, how we're allowed to. And then we also have zip files of the older versions of Visual Studio, individual ones. And then we have install instructions. What's it say? All we have to do is download the zip folder and extract the folders and images from the zip file. Let's do it. Let's download it. Thank goodness we have a choice. I really only want this Visual Studio 2019 image library. I don't really need any of those others. So I'm going to next. And I'm going to let it download. And it's amazingly fast.
It isn't done yet.
But it isn't done yet.
When it starts flashing.
You know it's not done yet. And when we go to extract it, then it can take quite a while too. But you're probably going to want to do this at home, to have this image library at home for working on your final. It contains all of the different images for toolbar items that we see in Windows. So while that download is running, let's see if we can look at some people's awesome survey forms. I'm going to stop sharing. And I want to ask Cody to show us his first, because he's right here in front of me, and I want to see it.
Okay, that sounds like a good Let me finish extracting.
You're fine.
Okay. All right, here is my thing. My
Can you zoom in a little bit?
yeah. I don't. Where's my?
SSDs in them. Why are they so slow? 5 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Just a second.
You know, on your
Yes,
designer.
they got me 10 megabytes on an SSD.
I've got this, but I don't know where my
Just double click on
my logic
form1.cs.
is.
Double click on form1.cs, the top one in your form.
I'm
Over here in your
Form1.cs.
Solution Explorer. Yeah. Just double click on that, and that'll open up the
Okay.
Form Designer.
well. That's the designer.
And then you can say view code, or just double click on a spot in it.
Sweet. Okay, so I've got a couple like empty things. Okay, I actually wanted to ask you about this because I went to tutoring and we spent like forever on it and could not figure it out. But I've got this like constructor of a fan
Okay.
like item, and then what I wanted to do was like I create the item and then have a button that when it's clicked, it processes the information and displays it.
Okay.
It was going to be this. So I have this button when I click it, and then, but we spent like forever trying to figure out how you can pass like information into a event-based.
Oh, okay. That's a really good one. Can we show everybody? Everybody kind of pay attention here, because this is a really common problem, and we've been working really quickly with what we've been doing. And there are pieces that are always things that are kind of hard to grab a hold of, to grasp on. So let's look at this. Cody, can you show us your fan class, your fan.cs file?
Yes. Okay, so what do we?
Just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's really nothing special. Everything's public. There's a date time element that's part of it, and then I've just got a empty constructor for default. One where they didn't select a radio option, and one where they did, or like didn't select a radio button. And then I've just got my 2-string
Okay.
thing. Yeah, so this was really nothing special.
So when we go back to our form class, I think what you're saying is it would be nice if the fan instance were global instead of it being local.
Yes.
So how could we do that? Let's go to your OK button code where we declare.
This one.
So right there where you have that very first line on line 31, where we declare our fan as a DG fan, could we move that up to the class statement? Move that one line of code up to right under your class. And now that's a class level variable.
Okay.
So
and that's
every
all good.
method in your form class will be able to access it. That's what you want, right?
Yeah, that is.
And so I know it's not going to work exactly the way you want it to right now because of making that change. But if you want to kind of show everybody.
I think it'll still work.
Okay, let's try it.
So yeah, we'll start it. This is my little Death Grips fan club group member information. We'll say who my favorite one is, say why, predict when their next album's going to drop, say how good this certain album is, and say what albums you have in your collection, and then submit it. And it gives you your information. And because you didn't say that that album was good enough, it says you're a fake. And then clear will just clear all the information.
How did you link up to the calendar?
Yeah, we were having trouble figuring out how to get the calendar to say a specific date.
The one that you selected, at least, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
No, well, that stuff is, it's on assuming.
yeah. It's just count the name of the
Okay.
calendar and then selection start.
Okay. 'Cause we saw the selection, but whenever we looked at selection, we didn't see start, and so it was just the entire selection of what you wanted.
Yeah, I actually there's a value in the just a second. There's a value in the actual calendar called
Go back to your, yeah, there you go.
it's like the amount that you can select.
Oh, the number of
Max-
days.
Max selection count. You
Okay.
set that equal to 1, and then you can't select multiple.
Okay.
You can only select one.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, I think that's all. But we were trying to like pass in this as
Mhm.
like the same way you would pass other like things by reference or by value, and so I guess we were just going about it the wrong way.
Because whenever we're thinking about the way our code executes, when we were working with console-based applications, it made sense for us to assume that our click event was going to call that other event. But they're
Right.
actually two different events, right?
Yeah.
So they're not being executed sequentially like they were when we were in our console-based application. So we can't really pass that to it. We have to instead make it a global variable so that it's available across the whole application. And if you guys notice when you're working with a forms-based application, everything that's on your form by default is a class level, is global. So a text box, we can access its contents in every method of our form class. You know, a checkbox, we can access it in every method. But whenever we're working with our own class like that, oftentimes it's helpful to just make that instance global so that we can access it from everywhere. Really good job, because I know it was a decision as to whether to create a class for that or not. So great job doing that. Everybody give Cody a hand for showing us. Yay. Okay, who else? I'd like to see another one.
All good.
Go, let's see, yay. Now, hopefully you guys should start seeing where it would be really hard for one developer to copy information from another. You guys can help each other as much as you want, but it's really hard to just copy code from somebody. So I don't worry too much about that happening anymore.
If you wanted somebody else to go, I'm still having to load Teams.
You what?
I wasn't on Teams on my laptop.
Oh, okay.
So I was learning.
Who else wants to show while Logan gets his set?
I'll show you my simple one.
Great.
I don't have anything fancy.
Oh, we got one in the back too. Good deal. Awesome. Used class also.
I did.
Great.
On my form, I had the calendar, but I was not able to link up the actual selected dates, but I
Mhm.
did instead link up the current date. I found a way to do that. So
Cool.
we'll run it. I get insert your name, insert your phone type. This is like simulating like ordering something. And you can subscribe, you can save for the next time. So that's your radio button and a checkbox. And you can clear it. I had the order summary just become visible.
Oh, that looks nice.
There's where I had my date.
Good. So how did you set it to the current date?
Look at that.
Because that is tough. Double click on form1.cs itself, and then you can view your code. Right click and view code, or there we go.
So text box. This is just something I found on
Mm-hmm.
Monktown. Obviously, we're all finding this online, right? So it's just a teach string.
Great. And then in your
Anything else
clear.
worth mentioning here, not really, besides the fact that the character term that you told us, that was a big one, because that kind of,
Was messing
Yeah.
everything up.
I can see other people running into that too. So
Yeah, I sent a Teams message to the other class hoping that they would see it too, because it's frustrating for sure.
yeah, you're not expecting it. You're really thinking, well, why is form so different?
These stupid little things that kill us, right? Can you go back to your forms code? Now, did you guys see that Justin accidentally do form1.cs? Because right now we're looking at your designer code, that Windows. And what I wanted to point out is he accidentally double clicked on his form. So he has that form load event procedure now empty in here. So let's delete that, because I know that causes trouble for everybody. So let's
We
delete
don't
it.
want form load? I actually thought that was like what populated it in the very beginning.
But you don't have to have one if you don't have any code in it.
Okay, do I gotta go to the designer then and get rid of it?
Now let's look at your form and see that it's all messed up.
Oh, you mean run it?
Well, your Form 1 designer. It should be angry at you
Okay, I gotta try to run it probably first.
before
And
it
then
tells
it'll
you.
get- Yes,
There it is. And now we can go to that error. It says Form 1 does not contain a definition for form1.load. So if you double click on your error down here in your error area, it'll take you right to it.
There we go.
And we want to delete that line of code. So just like any other event procedure, if we accidentally get one in there, we can just delete that.
I had tons of that going on in the beginning. It's so
Yeah,
easy to
everybody
double-click
does.
on 'em.
Everybody does. It's amazing how fast everybody cleans everything up, because it'll get
Can I
you.
just ask one quick question?
Sure.
On the menu, so say if I wanted to delete exit, how do I do that? Oh, there you go.
You see your delete.
Well, it wasn't there, okay. Never mind.
You see it? because it is kind of, and it can be kind of a pain. And it's so context sensitive that it might not show you delete if it hasn't registered the fact that you had something there, even if you haven't pressed enter.
Yeah.
So the context sensitive aspect can make things difficult because one time you use Visual Studio, you'll have these options on your menu, but next time you don't because you're working in a different kind of project. And so it gives you different options. And that's a thing that makes the tool very flexible, but can be really hard for new people. Josh, did you want to show us yours? Let's see it.
I started off with this one right here, just the basic one. Enter your name. You can answer on a scale of 1 to 10 how confident you are in using Windows Forms. And then I feel like a little recapture here. You can submit that and it'll show back to you, and the date will also show your date they selected. And then I made an alternate one because I thought that was pretty boring. So on this one, you can enter your name over here. The next slide, you can adjust the scale. Then you can do this one and then select the date, and you can go back and forth through all the questions like that pretty smoothly.
Ooh,
At
nice.
the very end, the next button turns into submit, and you can submit it. If you want, you can clear everything, set everything back to its default values. That's the right to start, and you can switch to that one on the first one.
Very nice.
For the question labels, are those 4 different labels, or do you just change the text?
I just change the text every time it's clicked.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's about it.
Any questions? It's really cool. Any others? You got it? Let's see it now. Logan's is connected now. Oh, nice.
Did a funny thing. Has your name, your age, gender, and then tells what kind of ships you've flown as a space ranger. And then I was trying to get it to display on a multi-line text box, but it didn't like that for some reason. It might have been because I was working with weird workloads.
Uh-huh. But that looks really good. That's neat.
So I didn't, so I wasn't able to add other forms because I didn't have that workload. So I was just hiding and showing everything.
And that's a real common way of doing things in Windows Forms. So it's perfectly acceptable. People do that all the time.
I did everything kind of basic through a input string.
Uh-huh.
And then I had it list as the text box. It was able to do it as a message box, but whenever I tried to put it in that text box, it didn't work properly. It only showed the first item. Yeah.
Let's see your form. On your form design, look at your text box. Now, because you have those tools buried, that's a really good time to use the properties window over here. Because that drop down will show you all your controls.
Yeah, I didn't.
And when you have them laid on top of each other like that, that's a really handy way to find them. So when you're looking at your text box, did you set that multi-line property?
I thought I did. Yes.
So it should be letting you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where is that text box? Can you make it bigger? Just make it bigger. Now let's see if that has an impact on what you're seeing in your output. Because I don't know if it'll resize it like a label would.
Well, maybe that's what I was thinking it would.
We'll have to see. Yeah, because different controls just have such different behaviors.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, okay. So it's just a size. So you had it all.
Awesome.
Sometimes we think we don't, and we do. Great. Thank you. Give everybody a hand. Woohoo! Yay! Yay! Anybody else got something? Because I think there's some really nice ones. If not, let's go back and see how we're doing with that download thing. Mine is done, so I'm going to show that in my folder. In my downloads folder now, I have my zip file, and I'm going to extract But I don't want to just leave this extract file in my downloads folder. Instead, I think I'm going to browse. And it would be best if I just put it on the C drive, right, so that I could get to it. So I'm going to open the C drive. And looking at the C drive, we have some folders and things we could use. But let's just create a new folder, and we'll call it VS Images for Visual Studio Images. And then I'm going to select that folder for my unzip. We'll extract those then.
What a huge file. We don't.
It's
What are we putting on this?
gargantuan.
I thought we were just playing with one icon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like it says almost 18,000 images. They're all small.
I will not do this at home.
That's 4,085 folders.
I will make my own.
Just for the Visual Studio 2019? Yeah, maybe that's why we want to do it here, just so you can get the ones you want and you can send them home.
13,860.
When I try to download this at home, it was one of those things where for 2019, they compressed it in some way that made it a lot smaller to download, because it used to take like 4 hours to download.
Just a set of images.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just so many of them.
I would rather download GTA 5 and
He wants to use his download time for something more entertaining, huh? Well, this is going to take a while. We should see more surveys. Let's go back to the back of the room. Joe's not here. Joe logged on. Isaac, can we see yours? Isaac, could we see your survey form? Do you have one? Yay! He's just hiding back there, being like, I'm not going to say anything. It's a birthday survey. What do we got here?
So I just made a few changes. I don't know if it'll still work.
Oop, you're gonna have to share your whole screen with us. We're not seeing it run. So stop sharing and share again and use the very first one that's the whole screen instead of just Visual Studio. There we go. And the running one is the one with the little, yeah, there we go. Okay, beautiful. Oh, nice. That looks good. Nice. So the way you set it up, you sort of used a survey class and just merged that with your form. So we have some class level variables up there to keep track of everything throughout the whole application. Makes it a lot easier. And you use some different event procedures. So what's going on there, like with your radio button? Tell us about that.
So this will, whenever it's changed, this radio button, it's checked. Set celebrate birthday, yes. Oh,
Nice.
then for the checkbox, I use the help students that motions. It's assigned a string. Then I just get printed out.
Good. Any questions? Nice simple way to do it. Good job. I think our unzip is done. Is everybody's done? Thank you, Isaac. Give him a hand. Woo! I like that one. I like them all. When we're practicing, when you guys have did this survey form, it's awesome if you used a separate class, and it's also great practice if you didn't. So either way, it just gives you an opportunity to really experiment with a Windows form. Okay, it unzipped, and within my Visual Studio Images folder, I have this VS Win 2019. So I'm going to open that folder, and then I have all these folders. So I'm going to go find File. So let me type a F to get down to the F's here. And I want the one that I was looking for was like File Open.
Well, there's not one of those.
So what do you see?
Maybe it's
Maybe under the O's?
open file. There it is.
Ah, so let's look in that open file folder. So now we have multiple images. They're different sizes, different types.
I only have one.
You only have one?
I only have one. It's just like the open, just open file 16x.png. Oh, because I think I added to the resource file, I guess.
Huh. Yeah, that should be enough because the PNG is all we need.
Yeah, you're looking at it through Windows itself.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm not using Visual Studio. I see what you're saying. I'm going to change my view here to extra large icons so you can see what they look like. So the open file 16x PNG is the little icon that we're used to seeing for the file open. Otherwise, we've got Internet Explorer in this new XAML one. So we want this open file 16 image. Let me get to my Visual Studio. I'm here in my select resource. I'm adding this resource to the project resource file. I'm going to go to the C drive.
That's what I was trying to do before.
To our VS Images folder, VS Win. And then we found it in the O's for open. Open file. And I want this little one. Like Max said, the PNG is the only one showing up. We'll put that in our resource file. Now when I click OK, that should update my tooltip or my toolbar to use that appropriate icon. Now, when somebody clicks this, I want an event to run. Let's look at our events for this toolbar item. And if somebody clicks it, we want to run that file open event that we already have. Open tool strip menu, right? So we don't need it to be a different event. We've already got that code. So let's just use that code we already have for our file open menu thing. All right, now when we run, get rid of everything so we can see it. We should see that if we click, oh, we've got to fix our tooltip. But if I click File Open, I get the common dialog. If I choose my toolbar item, I get the common dialogs. We're executing the same code either way. So that's one way that we can have all of these different avenues to get to things in Windows is because we're executing the same code, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And the tooltip is just the text.
Yeah, let's fix our tooltip. Click back on your icon and go back to properties and change your tooltip text to say something like open file. Now, the text property of that button is not showing up anywhere because we have that button set to not show the text, to only show the image. If we change the way that button displayed, right now it's display style image. If we change the way it displayed to image and text, then we'd see the text too. That would be ugly. But we could set up a button that way. Sometimes we like our tools to have text on them. Okay, so we've got our menu application here already. Right now, we've got some code in here for the font dialog. Let's add a button for that. I've already got a little helper icon here. I'm going to say I want a new button. My button, I'm going to change its name. It's not going to be button 1, it's going to be button font. And now I've got to find an image for it. So I'm going to go to our image library. We want to import it into our project resource file. Now, we should be able to go to the F's and find something about fonts. Because we've got icons here for everything.
There's literally a font folder.
Do you see it? I can't get to it. Font, 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 font.
Yep, font 16x.png. And you can actually just type font, like you just click in the white space to the right of the folder list.
What is
You can
it?
just type font.
Yeah, that's the only way I've been able to find it, 'cause the list is so long.
Yeah, I just click into that.
Yeah.
I got it.
I'll get to it. So there's the font. Open it. And I'm going to, okay, make that be the font button. That's an interesting font button, isn't it? Change your tooltip text to show font dialog. Now, our event. Change the event and set it to our menu font item. Font tool strip menu item click. Now that should make our font work, but I want to add a separator. So I'm going to add the separator and move it to be between the file open and the font tools, because we usually keep our file stuff separate from the other things. So now I've got a separator. So now I'm going to run. And this is nice because we don't have to add any new code. For my font button, it should execute my same font menu. Let me pick my font and update the font the way we had it before. Yay! I love it when we can add new functionality without adding new code. So nice. That's just what we want as developers. Phew, we've done a lot of work. I know there's a lot for you to look at and to consider. And as you're working on your hot and cold application, make sure that you consider using a class so that you can actually display whether the user is getting warmer or cooler. You know, that's a lot of variables that you could keep track of in your class. What was their last guess? You know, what is the number that we're trying to get? All that kind of stuff. So consider it. Next week, again, we'll be looking at opening files and reading them and saving files so that the following week we can have lab time just for our final. Questions before we go?
I have a question on L13 survey form assignment.
Uh-huh.
I uploaded it to TFS and I wasn't sure about what you mean for the submitting. You asked for a URL. I didn't know what to submit in Canvas. I sent it all to TFS.
That's okay. You guys are all so creative. I got all sorts of different things, and I like it. And the other class, I guess I messed up them, and it made them upload a file. So I've got some really interesting GIFs and things to look at. But let's take a look. If we look at our project in Visual Studio. This one, I need to add it to TFS. So on my solution, running out of time, I'm going to add it to source control. And then I'm going to check it in. Put my comment, initial, check in. Small toolbar, I remember. And check that in. Now, if we look at our home screen, I see that project here. It used to show it. It's just being mean. This would just have to be enough, that URL. If I go to our web portal and I look at repos and I go into that particular one, I could use that URL, but I don't need for you to go to all that trouble.
Okay.
But that would be the only way I know for sure to actually get the URL for that project. So it used to show it in Visual Studio, but it looks like you have to go to that portal now. So I'm super flexible with that, as long as I can find it in TFS. As you can tell, I've changed my mind quite a bit about how I want things submitted. And you guys are the
Now that I see the
subject.
URL though, I guess it was kind of straightforward though.
Well, but you have to go to the portal and find it. And
Have you seen that they're gonna release Visual Code 2022?
no, is that gonna be awesome?
I haven't looked at it yet, but I was wondering if you had just to see good or not, but.
I have
No,
mostly
no.
been looking at the form stuff because it's going to be just like it always is, a big decision on what parts of it we'll continue to teach and what parts we won't. Yes, Matt?
My Visual Studio just completely crashed before I could get anything into.
Okay, we'll
TFS.
fix it. Can you show it to us? Is it back now?
Like, as in, it completely crashed.
Will it let you open it back up? You guys, it's time, so get out of here and I'll see you next week. Have fun working on your hot cold app. One really good virusy type application that's always fun for people to create is one where when they mouse over the button, you move it away from their mouse pointer. Max likes that one, but that's a really good application to create for Windows Forms to just practice.
There's actually an old computer virus by the name of Magister that ran on like Windows NT that actually, one of its payloads.
That does, yeah.
Like, its criteria was it looked through the computer and it specifically targeted people in the law profession because it looked for specific phrases within like Word documents, even in English, French, and even Spanish. And if it found any of those terms, it would, of course, arm its payload, which couldn't ever be deactivated. And one of its payloads was it would make the icons run away from the mouse.
Disappear. So it's always a fun Windows game app. Get out of here. Have a great weekend.
Okay.
See you next week.
I'm gonna see you in like 2 days.
Yeah, I'll see you guys
On your device
in a couple of days.
forms to work.
Everybody else I won't.
So,
I'll see you whenever I get I successfully wired in a custom kill switch.
you have to go to the installer.
I told you I was going to do it. I didn't tell you I
We're
did
getting
it.
the option to install more worker payload. And then
It works.
I downloaded both the development
Kill
and then the
switch is armed.
.NET.
It has powerful fuel cord and thus the vehicle cannot start.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And of course,
How do you do that?
I'm not gonna tell you exactly where the switch is, of course.
Oh, no, I just mean like, how you know.
When I turn.
Sorry you had to fight with that so much. I'm glad you.
It wasn't even, it was really to help us.
If I don't-
It wasn't helpful.
They weren't helpful at all.
That is a lot. That is
I'm sorry
that
that.
is a lot.
Oh man, sometimes they're super helpful and sometimes they're not. Oh my gosh.
Well, this weekend I learned how to take a net coordinate framework.
Do what?
This weekend I learned the difference between that core and
I think that it's really
now I
coming
understand.
home to me too, how much of a difference there is, because like you're
It's just a simple.
talking about all the, you know, I always focus on what we currently have when we're teaching, when I'm teaching and trying to focus on that, but it looks like what's coming up is gonna be big, major changes. One semester it was TFS, with the TFS treasure hunt, there was some student, it was an online class, and some student that kept calling the whole test. And they kept being really angry with me. And I was like, every other student has it just fine, you know? And I don't want you guys to help them with them. Would you tell them that I was their instructor? And they're like, this student needs to work with their instructor. Yes, they do. Would you tell
But like you were saying at the beginning of class, because I imagine people are going to be making the form at home, it's going to be the same thing to them. You have to go into the modify installation of like Visual Studio and download that like .NET framework. Because that's what I was doing at home, I was just copying like what you did, and so I
So
had
you're
the
saying I'm
form.
downloading .NET Core now?
Yes, it's only core, so you don't even get frameworks. When you go to